Welcome back to Dr. Doug's Daily Tips of how to write great LDS church music. Today we're looking at primary song, I Thank Thee, Dear Father. Not a most common primary song, but there's a lovely little composer tool in this song that you could use to bring a certain feel to your music. Okay, you can see here circled in red, we have these little chromatic notes. Okay, see how the right hand, we start in thirds, we're in G major, and then we go down a half step to C sharp and A sharp, and then back up a half step to B and D. And then it happens again on Father. Father in. The soprano goes down a half step. The F sharp belongs to the key in this case, but the alto, B, A sharp, B, just like the first measure. Okay, these are what we call chromatic neighbor tones. A neighbor tone is a note that doesn't fit the chord, and it's just one step away from the note that did fit the chord, and then it goes back to where it came from. Okay, so if you look at the right hand on the first measure, on the word thank, you have a G major chord, and the right hand is on D and B. Those notes belong to the chord. But then it steps down, both of them step down to A sharp and C sharp. Those notes do not belong. But then it goes back to D and B. Those notes do belong to the chord. And how did it get to those notes? Well, it stepped. Okay, it stepped down to the chromatic notes, to the notes that don't fit the chord, and then it stepped right back where it came from. That's a neighbor tone. Okay, stepping to a non-chord tone, a tone that does not fit the chord, and then going right back by step to where you came from. In this case, we get two of them, right? The soprano is a neighbor tone, and the alto is a neighbor tone. In addition, they're not just any old neighbor tone. They happen to be neighbor tones that are not in the key signature, which is why we call them chromatic neighbor tones. Okay? Now, just listen one more time and see if you can think of a kind of a flavor that these two chromatic neighbor tones create. To me, it's kind of a brighter, almost cheery, almost like tongue-in-cheek a little bit. Not that the Thanking Heavenly Father is tongue-in-cheek, but it's like cute. It's almost winking in my mind. Like I can see a girl with ringlets or something and who's kind of winking, has a sweet little voice kind of a thing. It's almost like a little giggle. This kind of thing. It gives that kind of sense, that kind of feel. Now, you may interpret it a little bit differently. That's fine. But keep track of how you interpret it and mark that down like, oh, that sounds like this to me. So the next time you're in a situation with your music where you're trying to portray that feeling or that kind of emotion, pull out the chromatic neighbor tones. Pull out double chromatic neighbor tones just like this one. Okay, now if we scroll down, this happens again. So the third line, basically the song starts over, so we get it again. But then the last line, the tenor wants to play. So we the tenor on the A, G sharp, A. So we get da, da, da. Same idea, chromatic neighbor tone. Oops. And then the alto. Another chromatic neighbor tone. Okay? So they can use them throughout. What's nice is the opening of the song set kind of a precedent for it. The third line of the song repeated that precedent. So it's like, oh, this is a thing in the song. And then by using it in different ways on the fourth line, it sort of develops the idea by applying the chromatic neighbor tone to a different voice. Okay? It's like taking an idea and running with it, or extending an analogy or a metaphor or something like that. Okay, so when you use chromatic neighbor tones, they create that certain kind of strong sound. This is kind of like a wink or a cute smile from a little girl in my mind. Being the dad of 4 little girls, that's just what comes to my mind. Whatever it means to you, totally fine. But when they appear, they usually happen again because it's such a strong sound, and it becomes sort of part of the fabric of the music. Okay? So that is your daily tip for today, playing with chromatic neighbor tones. Hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like more free tips, head over to latterdaymusiversity.com, where you can get my free 20-page report, The 10 Commandments of Writing Warm, Fuzzy, Testimony-Building LDS Church Music. Totally free. Hope you'll enjoy that. Come back tomorrow, and we're going to look at the next primary song in the book. See you then.